Do you want to learn how to migrate your production WordPress site to your local machine? If so, stick around. Before I get started proper with the step-by-step guide, I want to give you a quick preview. So here I have MAMP Pro running. It has several hosts configured, one being pulpfreepress.com, www.pulpfreepress.com, photography.warrenworks.com, and then the www version of that, and then the warrenworks.local.com. On the left window here is the public-facing site. It's warrenworks.com. The local site, I've named it warrenworks.local.com. Now, the reason I make that name change is because if I were to change this to warrenworks.com, it would conflict with the public-facing site. And that's because when you set up these hosts, MAMP Pro will automatically configure your Etsy host file and take the name of this host and stick it in that Etsy host file with an IP address of your local machine. So if I were to name this locally hosted website, warrenworks.com, then it would always be going to my local warrenworks.com. But I want to work side by side, to make changes and then make changes over here. So that just enables me to run these two websites side by side, right? So I can see how they look. And that's where we're going for. So MAMP Pro allows you to do that first. And the other thing too is just a preview. It makes working with SSL incredibly easy, right? So you can see that this has the lock right up there and this has the lock over here. So here we go. Step-by-step guide to how to back up your production databases, your website, site files, and get everything running locally on your machine using MAMP Pro. So what might be your motivation to make this migration? Let's say that you started off ambitious, wanting to build your website, and you went with a hosting platform like HostGator. There's tons of those out there, but this is just an example. And you started off by building your website so that it's publicly accessible, right? You didn't start off, building it locally on your machine. So now you want to host it locally. Okay, that's a great reason. The other one is you just want a version of your website hosted locally. To run on two different versions side by side is probably the primary reason, right? So you want to run your local site so that you can make changes to it, and then if you like those changes, you can either push them or make those same changes to your production site. That's a great reason. It allows you to experiment with formatting, before implementing them in production. Or, and probably most importantly, you just want a local backup in case of disaster, right? So for disaster recovery purposes, you want a local copy of your WordPress site. Well, that's a great idea, right? So the tools that I'll be using for this video include MAMP Pro, which stands for Mac OS X, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Now, before you non-Mac people throw yourself off a bridge, I know you're already feeling pretty low because you don't use a Mac, and I can't help you with that. But it runs on Windows and Mac, right? So the great benefits of MAMP, which Mac users have known for a long time, are available on Windows edition as well, which should make you rejoice. It installs a complete WordPress hosting environment, and there's a MAMP version and then there's a MAMP Pro. You want MAMP Pro. And when you see what you're able to do with MAMP Pro, right, you don't want a chintzy on this one. Especially if you're hosting multiple websites, right? If you have multiple websites that you're hosting in production on somebody's platform and you want to run those locally on your local machine, right? Then you want MAMP Pro, right? That's what you want. Okay, the general steps to this procedure include the following. One, you want to install MAMP Pro, whatever platform you have, Mac, OS, or Windows. Then you want to download or back up and download your WordPress site files. followed by backing up and downloading your WordPress database files. If you have one or more databases, if you have one or more sites, you're going to repeat this until you download and, as many backups as you require. Then you're going to copy your WordPress site files to a sites directory, and then based on your version of MAMP Pro, it'll tell you where to put these files. So for example, on a Macintosh, your users directory has a sites folder, right? It'll be similar on Windows. Once you've got the site files copied to the sites folder, then you're going to import the database into MySQL. And there's several gotchas that you have to be aware of when you do this. Next, you're going to configure the host with MAMP Pro and then launch the local site. Tweak any issues that you may have. Usually these involve SSL certificates, and MAMP Pro makes it super easy to work with SSL. And then finally, I'll show you how to run your production site and your local site side by side, right? There's a little trick that you got to do in order to make sure that you can access your production URL versus your local site, especially if we want to do it by a host name. MAMP Pro is easy to install, so this will be the one section of this video that I don't go step by step through the install process. MAMP, again, stands for Mac OS X, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. It's like a totally packaged WordPress hosting platform. It's awesome, right? It's not just for WordPress, right? I mean, it's like whatever you want to host it for, right? But I use it to host WordPress sites locally. It runs on Mac and Windows, right? So I know you guys are crying because, well, if you're not a Mac user, you would be sad, right? Chances are you're in a bar drinking, But anyway, hey, there's reason to live, right? Because MAMP comes in a Windows version, right? Now, if you're a Linux user, then I just assume you know like all this crap, right? So you don't even watching this video, right? So if you guys know any Linux people who are struggling setting this stuff up, right? Just say, hey, get a Mac, set it up, right? Anyway, I'm a Mac fan, can you tell? So like I say, it comes with different versions, Windows and Mac. I obviously use the Mac version, right? But the nice thing about MAMP Pro, let's talk about MAMP versus MAMP Pro. If you have just one website and you want to host it locally, then I think MAMP, the MAMP version, right, is fine for you. But if you have multiple websites, multiple hosts that you want to host locally, and you want to work with SSL and you want some more advanced features, MAMP Pro is worth every penny. And it's not that expensive, but I'd say get MAMP Pro, right? Because it's just going to make your life easier. Now, you can use it for free for a little while. I've never done that. I just realized I'd used MAMP in the past, and I realized it was a great product. And then when I needed to host sites locally again, I just bought MAMP Pro, right? Because I saw the improvements that they had made over time, and it was a no-brainer, right? So it's easy to install, and we'll go into the detailed configurations. Right now, when you configure MAMP, right, it gets a little. It's not hard, right? It's just that there are some interesting gotchas along the way to make your life easier, and I'll talk about those when I get into the details, right? But installing MAMP Pro is easy. I recommend MAMP Pro if you have multiple websites and make your life easy. And that's it. Let's get into the details. Okay, first step that you want to do is you need to back up your WordPress site files and your database. So I'm going to step through how I do it. There's a couple different ways to approach this. Chances are you're using a hosting provider of some sort, right? So mine is HostGator. I'll show you how I do it with HostGator. Now, they have a couple different hosting plans. I'm not plugging HostGator. They're a great hosting provider, right? But you could have a version that you have cPanel, right? You have access to the cPanel, or you have like a managed WordPress hosting package. I use the managed WordPress hosting package, and that's fine for what I do, right? I really don't want to be in the administrative business. I want to be in the content creation business. So that's why it's good for me, right? So they have like a proprietary, I think it's proprietary interface for their managed hosting platform process, right? So here we have, I'm logged into my dashboard, right? If you log into your hosting provider and you have cPanel, you'll see something different, right? But the steps are generally the same, although because I'm using a product that automatically backs up my websites, right? In case I need them, right? I'm using a product called CodeGuard that comes with my hosting provider. So I'm going to show you how I can download my backups using CodeGuard, and then I'll show you how to use FTP to pull your site files down, and how to export your database with PHPMyAdmin if you have, which would be the way that you would do it if you are hosting your database with like your website with a cPanel access, right? I don't have access to cPanel. Like I say, I go through their proprietary interface. So first step is I'm going to get a backup, download a backup of my site files. So I go to CodeGuard, right, which is the product that comes with my hosting provider, and log into CodeGuard. And this is a big website, right? It's like 1.5 gigs. So website backup, right? So the way that I do it, at least the procedures for this, is I have to go to restore. And then my latest backup is February 24th. So I click on restore options and I'll select the download zip, right? And I'll just click to download the entire backup. Okay. Now you see there's a available zip file already, but I'm going to go for this newer date, right? So this is the most recent date. Now, while I'm doing this takes a little while to generate this because it's such a large website, right? So I'm going to go to databases. Okay. Let's go back to restore here. I'm going to scroll down. Let's see. These are the website files. I'm going to go back to dashboard. I'm sorry. Okay. So other database. So these are the database. Go to action, restore. There's a backup for the database on the 24th. So I'm going to go to restore options and request a zip. So now I've requested these zips for the 24th of February. So I will pause the video here, and when these zip files are ready for downloading, I will show you how I actually download them. Okay, now the site files and the database scripts have been, the zip files have been prepared based on the restore option request that I made a while back, right? So it took about 4 minutes for all the files to be generated. Now, I suppose you could just right-click on this and download it, but it's a pretty big honking file, right? So HostGator, at least my hosting provider, recommends you use a utility called either curl or wget, and that requires going into the terminal. So I'm going to pull up a terminal here, and let me make the font bigger so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Give me 1 second. That should be big enough there. So this will be my terminal window, and let me slide that out of the way and then pull this back so you can see it. All right, so I'll start with the site files. First off, I have a set of a backup location. So on my local file system, right, I have my websites folder, and I have a backups folder here, WarrenWorks, and I'm going to just create a new folder here. Okay, so this will be 24 Feb 2022. All right, and let me just open that, and I'll slide this out of the way. Now I'm going to navigate to that folder with my terminal. So it's located at cd/volumes, RAID 1/data, websites, backups, and then WarrenWorks, and I think it was 24, 22. So here I am. There's nothing in there. Now, the utility I'm going to use is wget. And the way that you do this is, now if you guys are out there using CodeGuard, so these are the site files. This one up on the top is the one I just requested. So right-click, copy the link, come back here and type wget dash capital O, not 0, but capital O, quote, paste in that download link, and you'll see from the URL is they actually store your backups in Amazon S3. All right. So hit return. Okay. Oh, you know why? Here's what I did. All right. So that's not right. Right. So I need to give it a name of the file, right? Losing my mind here. So let me do that again. wget dash O for, I guess, output, right? So I'm going to call this WordPress. I'll just say site files .zip. All right. And then paste in that download URL, finish it with a quote, and hit return. Okay, so now this will download. It takes, I want to say it takes a few minutes. We can sit here and talk about photography. We could talk about butterfly. No politics. We'll avoid politics and religion. But in order to spare you the long download, it shouldn't take very long. But I'm still going to pause the video until it's complete, and we'll return. Okay, these site files are almost complete downloading. And then we're going to repeat the same procedure for the database files. There we go. Got the site files. Let's do a dir. I'm going to return to the dashboard. We'll navigate to the database files. So we'll go to the restore, and we'll scroll up, and we'll see that the restore zip file is ready for download, and it's 8.90 megabytes. So again, right-click, copy the link, and we're going to do wget dash output, and don't forget the name this time. So it'll be dbscripts.zip, open quote, paste that download link, close quote, hit return, and this, whoa, see, even fast, right? 9-point-something meg. So, okay. Now, what do we do with these files? Let's talk about that in the next section. So what if you don't use a managed WordPress host package like I do, right, which has CodeGuard as, you know, to automatically back up your stuff, and you have access to cPanel, which allows you to have access to PHPMyAdmin to back up your database files. Also, too, if you don't use CodeGuard or a similar service to generate the zip files for download, you know, for your backups that were performed, you could also just use an FTP client. So my FTP client of choice is Transmit. So let me show you how that would work. So I have Transmit running here, and I have WarrenWorks configured. So here I'm just double clicking on that server, and there's my remote site files, right, for my WarrenWorks website. So now if I navigate down here to my localhost site directory, then here's my WarrenWorks locally, and I could just drag and copy the production files down to my local machine. And that would be a very effective and fast way to make that backup, right, of your site files. Okay, so that's another option. Now, when it comes to the database, let me quit Transmit. I'll pull up MAMP Pro. And so I've got the database selected. Okay, so I will click on PHPMyAdmin. And now this is what you would see if you were logged in the PHPMyAdmin on, you know, via cPanel. And you just select the database that you want to back up, and you go to export. Now, the important thing is you want to select custom, and then you want to scroll down, and you want to add the create database and use statement. Okay. Now, this is very important because the backups that are created by CodeGuard do not add this create database statement and nor the use statement. So that creates a little bit of a gotcha if you were to download the zip files like I did earlier. And I'll show you the workaround when it comes time to import the database. But if you just add this statement, it causes it avoids a lot of headaches. And then you would just click go to export that database. So that's how you do it if you had access to cPanel. In the next section, I'll show you how to actually where to put the site files in order to host them locally according to what MAMP wants, and then how to import the database. So let's get to it. So now that you have these site files downloaded, where do you put them? That's what we'll talk about in this section. Before I do that, though, I'm going to delete all the existing site files for the site WarrenWorks. So I'll do a complete host stand-up. So I'll go ahead and hit move to trash here. So this is MAMP, right? I'm moving it to trash. It goes to the trash. And then I just right-click on the trash and empty the trash. Remove. Now I'll go to the site files directory, which is in users. This is on a Mac, right? It's in my users site, and I'll remove that folder too. So move to trash. So can't you hear my heartbeat? Empty the trash. And just to make things complete, let me start MAMP, and I'll delete the database as well. The reason you have to run MAMP, right, is it's hosting PHPMyAdmin. Okay, we have we're gonna go into we got databases here. So we click on the database we want to drop, and we just click drop. Okay. While I'm at it, I'm going to go to user accounts, and this is the user account for that database. I'm going to go ahead and let's see here. How do I drop that? New add user. Okay, so I'm going to delete that, right? I'm going to delete that user. Sorry for the delay there. I just never did that before. Okay, so pretty much starting with a clean slate. That WarrenWorks database is not in MySQL, and I deleted the user. So I'm starting with a clean slate. So let me close that window. All right. Now, we have downloaded our site files and our DB scripts. So let's talk about how we actually are going to place these site files. MAMP wants to place site files in the sites folder. So that's this folder right here. Okay. I'll slide this window over this way and make it a little shorter. We don't need the whole thing. All right. So I'm going to start, and this is just born out of experience for so there's no nesting, right? So every site that you host, like here's a LocalHost, photography, Poultry Press, okay, all these other sites. Now I'm going to create a new folder and call it WarrenWorks, like that. So I'm going to open up that folder. Now I come to my site files, and I'm going to extract them. Now, this is the way they come when they come in this zip file. It doesn't take too long to extract them. So as soon as these things extract, we're going to go grab the site files and move them over to the site directory WarrenWorks so that we can have access to them when we create the host in MAMP. Okay. This thing is just about done. All right, so there's our folder. So this is what actually is generated from my CodeGuard backup. So I'm just going to come in here In the public HTML, select everything and move them over here into the site file folder, WarrenWorks. And while those are copying, actually it doesn't take too long, so we'll just go ahead and have some chit chat. So the longest files, the content, WP content, especially for this WarrenWorks website, is where most of the data resides. It's all the images and everything that you upload. Okay, so that's almost done. Once that big folder gets copied over, then the rest of the copy should go pretty fast. Okay, and there we go. We're almost done. There we go. Okay, so now I can move this folder out of the way. We'll talk about the database in a second, but this is where the site files go. Now, before we actually create the host, I'm going to import the database files. And this database import is probably your trickiest part. There's a couple gotchas, and once you get past those, then everything else is pretty straightforward. All right, so let's move into that in the next section. At this point, we have our site files in place. These site files will become, we'll have to access the WP config PHP here in a second, so you might as well just keep them open. MAMP is running, and the reason we need MAMP running is in order to import the database, we need to have PHPMyAdmin running. So I'll crank up PHPMyAdmin, and we'll go import. Now, what are we going to import? So let's go to our database backup. Here's our DB script zip. So I'm going to unzip that. There's our database. And I'm just going to pull this backup SQL out, all right, into the top folder and delete that folder. Now, this is where experience has taught me a few lessons, right? So let's just say that you did this and you hadn't watched this video, and you do an import. First off, you have to note a couple things. One, that the size of this backup was 9.3 megabytes, and the size of the folder that was downloaded was 9.3. So there was no compression on this database when it was downloaded, or this file when it was downloaded from the website or from CodeGuard. Okay, that's important to note, especially if you're using this procedure, right? So if you try to import this file without reading this, right, you can import a compressed zip file, which is key, but let's just say you didn't read this max size of 8.192 megabytes, right? Yeah, so we're going to choose the file, and we're going to go to RAID 4.1 data. Let me navigate to that backup site, and we'll select that backup.sql 24, and we're going to try to import this, and we'll hit go, and it's going to give us an error. It says incorrect format parameter. That's a tricky one, right? So I believe this has to do, obviously this has to do with the size of the file, and there is some way that you can actually increase this import parameter. But the workaround is, if you don't want to be bothered with that, is to simply compress this file. So on a Mac, it's as easy as, I think in Windows too, is I'm going to just compress it, right? So look, it compresses down to 1.1 megs, right? So that's a huge difference. So now let's try that again. I'm going to select this compressed version. So there's the compressed version, and then hit go. And now we get another issue, and it said drop table if exists, WP comments. It says no database selected. So remember in that export section on the database, I said you got to click that little checkbox that says include a create database. Well, let's go take a look at this SQL file, and we'll see that that create database statement or the use database is not there, which is why this error is being generated. So we have to add that statement in order to create the database. So I'm going to open I'm going to just delete this zip file here that I just created, move to trash. And I'm going to edit this. Let's select the right file. I'm going to edit the backup SQL using, I'll use Sublime. Okay. Now, we see here that there is no create database statement. So I have actually prepared this ahead of time. So here's another window. I'll go to backups folder again. And here in WarnWorks, and here is the DB commands in WarnWorks. So I'm going to open this also in Sublime. Okay, and there's the statement that's missing. Okay, so what we do is just copy. Now, like I say, I've done this before, but what if you haven't done it? How would you know what to put here for these values? So let me go ahead and copy this statement and stick it in here. So I'm going to stick it right here on line 17 because it's before everything else and it's after the headers, so V. So now I'm ready to import this and have it work after I compress it. So I'm just going to save it. But there's the database name, okay? And there's the database name, and then there's the create statement. So create database if not exists, and use that database. Now, where do we get that information from? So in your WordPress site files, you have your WP config PHP. Of course, this file contains sensitive information as well. And I'll open it with Sublime. Okay, so here's our PHP config, or wp-config.php, and here's the database name, okay? Right there, okay? And the user name is right there. And the user database password is right there. So that's where you're going to grab these values from, okay? So let's go ahead and leave that window open because we're going to have to access it. I'll move it over this way. So we can proceed now. Let's compress this back up because we've made the edits to it and saved it. I can close this file. So I've saved it. Let me close that file. Let's go back to the folder. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to compress the backup. I will re-import that backup. Choose the file. So it should work fine this time. If everything's working fine, when you hit go, it'll think about it for a little while and then should give you a success message here when everything has been created and your database exists. And then once the database is successfully created, did I hit go? I hit go. There we go. I guess if I hit go, it would go. All right, so it doesn't take very long. So as soon as this returns with a success statement, then we can create the database user and give it the proper password, etc. Okay, so we'll get this going here. There we go. So import has been successfully finished. Not the best English there, I suppose, but okay. Now, user accounts. We need to add a user account. So I'm going to create a new one, add user account. And this is where all that other information comes in handy. So I'm going to slide this over this way. And I'll just, I'll pull this over here to the right. Okay, so the database user, username comes from that WP. So I'm going to copy the database username. And any host is fine. Password, I'm going to copy that same password. You can generate a new password, but if you generate a new password here, you would have to change it in your WP config file. All right, so password, and then copy that password. Okay, and I'm just going to grant all the privileges, right? No time to screw around here. and then hit go. Okay, so I created a new user. Now let's go check on that user. So user accounts. Here's the user. I'm going to go there, and it's got all the privileges. Okay, so at this point we're good to go. All right. So now we can turn our attention to creating the host in MAMP, and that's the topic of the next section. So I'll see you in the next section. We have our site files in place. We've imported our database. We created the database user. It's likely we could have made a mistake along the way in that database, but we'll find out soon enough. Now we're going to work in MAMP to add a host. And we're going to go to Apache here, hosts. And I'll click on Apache hosts. Let me select the host. All right, I'm going to create a new host, and there's one or two gotchas here, but anyway, it's pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and stop MAMP. You don't have to do this. I'm just going to start from a clean slate, right? So you got a new host. You created the directory, you put the site files in the directory, you imported the database. So start MAMP. I got my friends pinging me on Slack here on the side. All right, plus sign down here, empty. Basic, continue. Name the host. I'm going to call it warrenworks.local. Well, actually, let's start off with warrenworks.com, and I'll show you what I mean by the conflict and how the etc host file is configured. warrenworks.com. So you got to choose your document root. Now, you just can't go to sites, and you just can't click on the document folder. You have to open it up and then hit open. Then you get the create host. Okay? And then MAMP will go ahead and restart, generate the SSL cert and everything. We can check on that here in a second, but for the IP address, I'm going to select the actual IP address. And since we're going to be using SSL, I'm going to hit 443 for that port number. And then I'm going to hit save. Okay, and it's going to reconfigure. Okay, now there's errors, right? Because we haven't configured a log file, a database file yet. So, okay. Now I'm going to start, let me see, I'll start here, right? So I need this. So I got my host here. I'm going to go down to databases, select the databases tab. I'm going to select the host, the database for this particular host. So warrenworks.com website is going to use this WAMVIA, the one we just created. I'm going to hit save. Okay. I like to do another stop here, right? And then a restart. So give that 1 second for it to start. And then I'll check the SSL cert here, and it looks like it's got warrenworks.com. So let's go ahead and hit warrenworks.com and see what pops up. Oh, that's WarrenWorks local. No, see, there is no WarrenWorks local, right? So that didn't work, right? So we're going to go to https warrenworks.com. Give it a second here, and bada bing. Okay, so that's the website. Now you're like, well, how do you know that that's the website? Well, that's a good point, right? It looks just like the public website. Let me pull this over, and let me pull up a terminal. Well, let me just pull this one up over. It's already open. All right, so I'm going to switch. Let me pull this up so it's like at your eye level here. So I'm going to change directory to / and then cd etc and cat hosts. So notice these entries here, right? So all the hosts that are configured in MAMP right? I'll just do this, right? You can see that there's a correlation. MAMP will automatically add these redirects in your host or your DNS name entries, right, for the localhost hosts file in Etsy /root Etsy host file. And there's warrenworks.com, right? So it's set to 192.168.1.79. So let's go ahead and ping that. Ping warrenworks.com, and it's going to the local. So this site is the local, right? So you can't access the internet site because it's being overridden by this one, right? So now the workaround that I find is, let me go ahead and shut that down, is just come over here and I'm going to select general, and then I'm going to rename this host, right? .local.com. All right, and I hit save. And then it'll go through a reconfiguration here. And once it's done with this, I like to stop it and start it again. And like I say, this is just born out of experience. It makes changes to the database, right? Because it has to go in there and update some stuff. Now it's restarting, so I'm not going to have to restart it. So it restarted itself. I will check on the SSL certs to make sure they got properly generated. So here's the SSL. So there is no. So I'm going to stop. Okay, there it goes. The first one got created. You see that one got populated? And the second one. All right, so that seems to be fine. So now let's pull up the local. I didn't have to do any. See, this is why I love MAMP, right? It's like it does this stuff for you. So HTTPS, oops, local.com. Okay, it takes a little while the first time it gets powered up. There we go. That's our local site right there. Now, there's no mistake in that. If we go back to Etsy and we do cat hosts, there we go. It's got warrenworks.local.com. And now we are able to pull up another window, new window, and access warrenworks.com. That's our production site in internet land right there. Okay, so that's our live site out there in the public, and this is our local site, and that's how you do it. Stick around, and I will go over the steps one more time. I'll do a quick review on the steps required to do this, just as a closing outro. Anyway, I wish you all success. Look, if you have any questions, hit me up, rick@warrenworks.com or rick@pulpfreepress.com. Or leave comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, quick review. The general steps, we installed MAMP Pro, Windows or Mac Edition, whichever platform you have. Then we backed up the WordPress site files, downloaded them either with FTP or using whatever backup and download process your host provider has for you. Then we backed up and downloaded the database files, copied the WordPress files to the site directory, and you have to consult the documentation for MAMP to figure out where to put those at. On a Macintosh, it is your users directory / sites folder. Then you import the database into MySQL. And finally, when you've got both the site folders in place, or the site files in place, and the database imported, then you configure your host with MAMP Pro. If you want to run the site side by side, like your production site and your local site, the local site has to have a different name. I usually just put .local.com to differentiate between the two sites, and that lets you know when the local site is running. You can see from the URL that local site has a different, that you're actually on the local site versus the production site. And that's about it. So, look, if you have questions, hit me up in the comments or send me an email, rick@pulpfreepress.com. I'll be happy to answer them. And I hope you have much success in your WordPress site migrations. Have a great day.